It's a Tuesday morning, you're still half asleep, and before your feet even hit the floor, your thumb is already doing it, unlocking your phone, swiping to the weather app, squinting at the number on the screen. 67 degrees. Cool enough for a jacket. Maybe. Every American does some version of this, and nobody else on the planet does it quite the same way. But have you ever wondered, why 67? Why not 19? And why does almost every other country on Earth read that exact same weather in a completely different number? If you've ever wondered how a temperature scale invented in a Dutch workshop 300 years ago ended up living inside your phone, you're about to uncover a little piece of history hiding inside everyday life, and it goes much deeper than America's just stubborn. To understand why your weather app speaks a different language than the rest of the world, we have to go back to 1724, to a small workshop in the Dutch Republic, and meet the guy whose last name is on every American thermometer ever made. In the early 1700s, Europe had a problem. Thermometers existed, sort of. Glassblowers across the continent were making little tubes of colored liquid, but every one was different. Every scientist had his own scale. Science was begging for a standard, and nobody had figured out how to give it one. Measurement, it turns out, isn't something we discover in the world. It's something somebody has to sit down and invent. Somebody had to decide what counts as zero. Enter Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit. Born in Danzig in 1686, orphaned as a teenager, he ended up apprenticed in Amsterdam, and somewhere along the way, he fell in love with glass. He became one of the best instrument makers in Europe, a man who could blow a glass tube and fill it with mercury so precisely that two of his thermometers, made years apart, would actually agree with each other. That was the breakthrough, not the scale, the instrument. Fahrenheit's mercury thermometers were the iPhone of the early 1700s. Suddenly, everyone wanted one because his were the only ones you could trust. And here's where the story flips on you. You've been saying his name your whole life. Fahrenheit isn't an abstract system, it's a surname. The way Ford is stamped on the back of a pickup truck, Fahrenheit is stamped on every weather report in America because a Polish-German glassblower 300 years ago happened to put his name on the side of his product. He needed a scale to go with his thermometers, so around 1724 he proposed one, and the numbers he picked are the second strange thing about this story. You probably assume the zero on a thermometer means something profound, the coldest possible temperature, the bottom of nature, something cosmic. It means none of that. 0 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature of a slushy bucket, specifically the coldest stable temperature Daniel could reliably reproduce in his workshop, a mixture of ice, water, and ammonium chloride salt that always settled at the same chill. 32 was the freezing point of plain water. 96 originally was roughly the temperature of the human body. 3 reference points a guy could recreate on his workbench on a Tuesday. Now, you may have heard a different version, the romantic one, that Fahrenheit set 0 at the coldest temperature ever recorded in his hometown of Danzig on some terrible winter day. It's a great story. It's also almost certainly not true. Fahrenheit himself wrote about the brine mixture. The Danzig winter is folklore that crept in later because the coldest day in his hometown sounds more poetic than a bucket of salty slush. The real version is somehow stranger, and it stuck. Because Fahrenheit's thermometers were so much better than anyone else's, his scale rode his hardware across Europe. Britain adopted it, and what Britain adopted, Britain exported to its colonies, its trading posts, its ships. The American colonies grew up speaking Fahrenheit because the British Empire did. Measurement standards don't travel on logic. They travel on whoever makes the best tool. Then in 1742, a Swedish astronomer named Anders Celsius proposed something cleaner. Water freezes at 0, water boils at 100. Done. He actually had it backwards at first, and somebody flipped it after he died. When the French Revolution invented the metric system a few decades later, Celsius got bundled in with it. The world started converting in waves through the 1800s and 1900s. Even Britain, the empire that had spread Fahrenheit everywhere, switched its weather forecasts to Celsius in the 1960s. And America? America almost did too. This is the part most people don't know. In 1975, President Gerald Ford signed the Metric Conversion Act. There was a U.S. metric board. Highway signs went up in kilometers. School children were taught metric in classrooms across the country. It was genuinely about to happen. Then somebody read the fine print. The law was voluntary. People kept buying gallons of milk and pounds of hamburger. In 1982, the Reagan administration defunded the metric board and the project drifted to a stop. Cultural inertia isn't a passive thing. Somebody has to decide not to change. And somebody did. By then, Fahrenheit had soaked too deep to scrub out. Every oven dial, every thermostat, every doctor's chart reading 98.6, every weather report, every recipe. More than 330 million Americans now check Fahrenheit every morning, the largest single population on Earth still doing this. Which raises the obvious question. Isn't Fahrenheit actually better for weather? You hear this defense a lot, that it gives you finer granularity in the band of temperatures humans live in, 0 to 100 mapping loosely onto very cold to very hot. There's something to it, but every other country on Earth manages fine with Celsius decibels. The better for weather argument is something Americans came up with after the fact to justify what they were already doing. It's a rationalization, not a reason. So who else still uses it? A short list. The Bahamas, Belize, the Cayman Islands, Palau, Liberia in some contexts, and the United States. If you drew a map of the world's last Fahrenheit holdouts, it would look like the faint outline of a forgotten empire, a few islands where British trade winds blew, and one very large country that almost let go and then changed its mind. Which is really what that number on your weather app is, not a measurement. A fork in history that quietly never closed, and you're standing on the other side of it every morning, checking whether you need a jacket. So the next time you glance at your phone and see 67 degrees, remember what's riding inside that number. A Polish-German orphan with a talent for glass, a bucket of salty ice, a British trade empire, a president who almost flipped the country and didn't. All of it tucked into the corner of your screen before you've even had coffee. Thank you for watching. If you have ideas for our next video, drop them in the comments. And while you're there, tell us the temperature wherever you are right now in whichever scale you grew up with. We'd love to see where Fahrenheit ends and Celsius begins. Thanks for joining us for another piece of heirloom history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more of the things Americans do every day and almost never stop to question.